The autumn rain beat steadily against the tall windows of the grand Victorian mansion in Newport, Rhode Island, while antique dealer Catherine Walsh carefully went through the contents of the Piton estate. The family had lived in this impressive house overlooking the Atlantic Ocean for almost 100 years. But after the death of the last heir, everything inside was being sold to pay debts and taxes. Catherine specialized in old photographs and historical papers, and she had been asked to examine what looked like a large collection of family keepsakes. Inside the mansion's oak-paneled library, she found dozens of photo albums, each one neatly arranged and carefully labeled in graceful handwriting. One album in particular drew her attention. It was bound in deep burgundy leather with brass corners, and the cover read, "The Peton Family, War Years, 1914 to 1920. When Catherine opened it, the smell of aged paper and long-forgotten moments seemed to rise into the air. The photographs showed a wealthy American family living through the difficult years of World War I, with images of garden gatherings, charity functions, and formal family portraits. On page 12, Catherine stopped at a powerful formal portrait dated Christmas 1917. The photograph showed the Peton family posed inside their elegant drawing room, surrounded by costly furniture and rich holiday decorations that reflected comfort and status. Mr. Charles Peton stood behind his wife's chair, looking proper in a well-fitted suit, while their 3 children, 2 boys and a girl, stood nearby in festive clothing. Yet it was Mrs. Eleanor Peton who stood out the most. Sitting proudly in an ornate chair, she wore a refined black velvet dress decorated with detailed beadwork, and her dark hair was styled in the fashionable Gibson girl look of the time. Most striking of all were the spotless white gloves she wore, extending past her wrists, neat and formal. Something about Mrs. Peton's left glove caught Catherine's eye. While her right hand rested naturally on the arm of the chair, her left hand looked stiff and awkward, almost guarded. The glove on that hand appeared slightly thicker than the other, as if it was hiding something beneath the fabric. 3 days later, Catherine sat in the conservation lab at the Newport Historical Society, facing Dr. Elena Rodriguez, an expert in historical photo analysis. The room was filled with advanced equipment designed to study and protect old documents without harming them. "This is truly an impressive family portrait," Dr. Rodriguez said as she adjusted special lighting over the image. The Peton family was very well known in Newport at this time. Charles Peton built his wealth through shipping and steel, and Eleanor was famous for her charity work during the war. Catherine pointed toward Mrs. Peton's left hand. "Something about the position and shape bothers me. It just doesn't look natural." Dr. Rodriguez examined the photo closely through a magnifier. "You're right to notice that. Look at how she's holding her hand. There's tension, like she's trying to hide something. And the glove does seem oddly shaped." She switched to another lens with stronger contrast. "See how the fabric stretches here near the wrist," she said, pointing carefully. "And these shadows don't match what we'd expect from a normal hand." Dr. Rodriguez moved to her computer and began scanning the photo at high resolution. "I want to try some digital enhancement. Sometimes details appear that were missed before." When the enhanced image appeared on the screen, both women inhaled sharply. Under magnification, it became clear that Mrs. Peton's left glove was hiding something important. The outline of heavy bandaging could be seen beneath the white fabric, along with faint stains that were invisible in the original image. "Catherine," Dr. Rodriguez said softly, "I believe Mrs. Peton was hiding an injury. But why go to such trouble during a family portrait?" Catherine asked. "And what kind of injury would need that much bandaging?" She stared at the image, feeling uneasy. Over the next week, Catherine searched deeply into the history of the Peton family. At the Rhode Island Historical Society, she met genealogist Marcus Thompson, who knew a great deal about Newport's powerful families from the early 20th century. The Petons were indeed among the city's most influential families, Marcus explained, spreading out folders filled with newspaper articles, social columns, and business records. Charles Peton was heavily involved in wartime production, supplying steel for ships and weapons. Eleanor was just as visible in society. She organized charity efforts, hosted fundraisers for the war, and was considered one of Newport's most graceful women. Catherine showed Marcus the enhanced photograph and explained the strange shape of Mrs. Peton's glove. Marcus studied it carefully. "This is very interesting," he said. I have records from 1917, and there are noticeable gaps in her social appearances around Christmas. He pulled out clippings from the Newport Daily News. Throughout 1917, Eleanor Piton appears often in the society pages. Then, suddenly in December, there's almost nothing. No Christmas parties, no holiday events at the mansion. Marcus continued searching. Here's something else. I have a guest list from the heirs' New Year's Eve ball, one of the biggest events of the season. Eleanor was expected, but the family sent regrets at the last minute, saying she had a temporary indisposition. What kind of indisposition? Catherine asked. That's the strange part, Marcus replied. There's no explanation. Families were private about health matters back then, but usually there would be at least a mention. He then pulled out a shipping document from Charles Petton's company. In late November 1917, there was a serious accident at one of Piton's steel foundries. Several workers were hurt, and Charles went there himself. Catherine felt a cold realization. Marcus, do you think Eleanor was there when it happened? Catherine next visited the Rhode Island Department of Labor Archives, where old industrial accident reports were stored. She met archivist David Kim, who specialized in workplace safety records from the World War I period. Accidents were sadly common during the war, David explained, as he gathered files on the Piton steel works. Production pressure often meant safety was ignored. The report from November 28, 1917 was disturbing. A furnace explosion injured 6 workers and caused major damage. Look here, David said, pointing to a section. It states that Mrs. Charles Petton was injured during the incident and taken to Newport Hospital. He paused. Later notes say the family requested all medical records remain private. Catherine's heart raced. What kind of injuries? It doesn't say, David replied, but metal fragments were thrown across the area. Anyone nearby could have suffered serious wounds. He checked hospital records. Mrs. Petton was admitted at same day and stayed nearly 2 weeks. That's a long time for that era, Catherine said. Yes, David agreed. Unless the injuries were severe. She was well enough for a Christmas portrait, but as your photo suggests, she was likely hiding the damage. He hesitated. There's more. The report mentions she was wearing her wedding ring and other jewelry during the explosion. Doctors had trouble removing them. What kind of trouble? Catherine asked. David looked grim. The kind that requires major surgery and leaves permanent damage to the hand. With Dr. Rodriguez's help, Catherine gained permission to view old medical records at Newport Hospital. Dr. Sarah Chen, the hospital's chief medical historian, met them in a restricted archive. Medical privacy is complicated, Dr. Chen said, but given the age of this case, we can review it. Eleanor Piton's records from late 1917 revealed everything. The explosion had badly injured her left hand and wrist, embedding metal fragments and destroying several fingers. Dr. Chen read from the surgeon's notes. Her wedding ring was forced into her finger by the blast, causing catastrophic damage. Emergency surgery was required to remove it. The records described extensive surgery, severe cuts, and the amputation of Mrs. Petton's left ring finger. The surgeon noted that Mrs. Petton was deeply concerned about appearances, Dr. Chen explained. She insisted the injury stay secret and requested a prosthetic solution so she could appear normal. Catherine studied the drawings. A carefully crafted prosthetic finger had been made to fit under a glove. Mrs. Piton demanded that no one outside the family ever learn the truth. The final notes from December 1917 stated that with the prosthetic and careful styling, most people would never suspect her injury. But the photo shows extra bulk, Catherine said quietly. Yes, Dr. Chen nodded. The portrait was taken less than a month after she left the hospital. She would still need padding and protection while healing. Catherine later returned to study the social pressures faced by wealthy women of that time. She met Dr. Patricia Hoffman, a historian focused on women in early 20th century high society. To understand Eleanor's choice, Dr. Hoffman said, "You must understand the pressure women faced. Appearance was everything. For a woman like Eleanor, any visible injury could harm not only her reputation but her family's position. People might think an accident would earn sympathy," Dr. Hoffman added, but society was often harsh. Physical perfection was linked to social worth. A visible disability could mean exclusion from powerful social and business circles, and so, hidden beneath a white glove in a Christmas portrait, Eleanor Peaton concealed a painful truth that society was never meant to see. Dr. Hoffman showed Catherine photographs of other Newport Society women from the same period. She pointed out how every woman in these formal portraits appeared absolutely perfect. Smooth skin, straight posture, and graceful hands were always clearly visible. Hands were seen as strong symbols of elegance and good breeding. Dr. Hoffman then pulled out a society magazine from 1918. "Look at this article about graceful living," she said. "It clearly states that a lady's hands should always look pure and untouched by rough work." For Eleanor to have lost a finger, especially her ring finger, would have been considered deeply embarrassing. There was likely pressure from her husband's business interests as well. Dr. Hoffman explained that the Charles Peaton Steel Company depended heavily on social relationships to secure government contracts during the war. Having a wife who appeared injured or imperfect could have harmed those connections. Catherine began to understand the heavy burden Eleanor must have carried. She chose to hide her injury instead of risking social shame and financial damage to her family. Dr. Hoffman agreed. The Christmas portrait was likely meant to show that Eleanor had fully recovered and that the family had survived the crisis without lasting harm, even though, as the photograph revealed, that was not entirely true. Catherine's research then led her to study the history of prosthetics and medical devices in early 20th century America. At Brown University's Medical History Archives, she met Dr. Robert Martinez, who had written extensively about prosthetic development during World War I. The war created an enormous demand for prosthetic limbs and devices, Dr. Martinez explained as he showed her photographs and records from the era. Advances in medicine meant more soldiers survived severe injuries, but many were left permanently disabled. He pulled out a catalogue from 1917 published by the American Prosthetic Company. "Look at these ads," he said. "They promote invisible solutions for people who wanted to hide their disabilities." There was strong social shame attached to visible prosthetics. The catalogue included detailed drawings of prosthetic fingers designed especially for women. These devices were surprisingly advanced for their time. Dr. Martinez explained that they were custom-made to match the remaining fingers, and the best ones were nearly impossible to tell apart from real fingers when worn under gloves. Catherine studied the images closely. "How were these made in 1917?" she asked. Dr. Martinez explained they were usually carved from ivory or treated wood, carefully colored and shaped. The most expensive versions even had simple joints to allow limited movement. He showed her a case study from that time. The process often took weeks and required many fittings to ensure comfort and realism. He then showed Catherine a photograph from 1918 of a woman wearing a prosthetic finger. "As you can see," he said, "when gloves are worn, it's almost impossible to notice." He pointed to the glove in the image, but notice how the glove looks slightly stiff and formal, very similar to Eleanor Peaton's glove in the family portrait. Catherine realized the prosthetic would have required a slightly larger and firmer glove to hold the device and extra padding comfortably. Dr. Martinez then pulled out an invoice from 1917. It was from a Boston prosthetic maker who specialized in what he called society solutions. The prices were extremely high, equal to several $1,000s today, but for families like the Peatons, protecting their social image was worth any expense. Catherine decided to search for personal records that might reveal more about Eleanor's injury and recovery. At the Redwood Library in Newport, she discovered that one of Eleanor's daughters, Margaret Peaton Collins, had donated her mother's private papers in the 1960s. The collection included letters, diary entries, and personal photographs that had never been shown publicly. Librarian James Morrison helped Catherine explore the large archive. The Collins donation was very detailed, he explained, pulling boxes from climate-controlled storage. Margaret wanted to preserve her mother's memory, but requested that certain items remain sealed until the year 2000 to protect the family's privacy. Eleanor's diary entries from late 1917 gave a deeply personal view of her experience after the accident. In neat handwriting, she described her pain, her fear of social judgment, and her determination to appear flawless in public. Catherine read one entry dated December 15, 1917. "The prosthetic is still uncomfortable, and I must be careful how I place my hand. Charles insists no one must ever learn of the accident. Too much depends on our reputation. Another entry dated December 22 said, "We are having the Christmas portrait taken tomorrow. The photographer has promised silence about any irregularities. I pray the gloves and careful posing will preserve the illusion." Catherine also found a letter Eleanor had written to her sister in California. "You cannot imagine the constant effort required to hide this condition. Every public appearance must be planned. I feel as though I live behind a mask, but Charles is right. Too much depends on appearances." The most revealing document was a letter Eleanor wrote to her daughter Margaret in 1925, 8 years after the accident. "My dearest daughter," it read, "I hope one day you will understand why we hid the truth about my injury. In our world, perception is everything. One careless moment could have destroyed not only my place in society, but your father's business and your own future," she added. "The Christmas portrait has become a symbol to me, proof that we could present strength and perfection even in hardship. Yet I often wonder if the price of such illusions is too heavy for the soul." With all the evidence gathered, Catherine arranged a meeting with the Newport Historical Society board to present her findings. The meeting took place in the main conference room, with Dr. Rodriguez, Marcus Thompson, and other historians present. Catherine began by displaying the enhanced photograph, clearly showing the unusual shape and thickness of Eleanor Peaton's left glove. She carefully explained each piece of evidence: the factory accident report, hospital records, research on prosthetics, and Eleanor's own private writings. "This," Catherine said, "is not just a family portrait. It is a carefully staged performance meant to hide a serious injury and protect social status." She showed Eleanor's diary entries and letters. Mrs. Peton lost her ring finger in an industrial explosion and went to great lengths to keep it secret. The Christmas 1917 portrait was meant to show full recovery, even though she was still suffering physically and emotionally. Dr. Rodriguez added her analysis. "Digital enhancement shows not only the prosthetic finger, but also heavy padding and bandaging beneath the glove." Marcus Thompson added historical context, explaining the intense social pressure wealthy women faced at that time. Revealing a disability could have destroyed a family's social and business position. The board members were captivated. Chairwoman Dr. Elizabeth Warren said, "This changes how we see the photograph completely. What looked like a simple family portrait is really a powerful record of a woman's struggle with injury, expectation, and loyalty." Catherine concluded by explaining that Eleanor successfully kept her secret for the rest of her life. She continued attending events, hosting charities, and holding her place in society for another 30 years. The prosthetic and careful styling protected not only her reputation but her family's future. "The photograph," Catherine said, "reminds us that every portrait carries more than one story, the one meant to be seen and the truth hidden beneath." 6 months later, the Peton family portrait became the centerpiece of a new exhibition at the Newport Historical Society called Hidden Stories: What Family Photographs Don't Show. Catherine worked with Dr. Rodriguez and the exhibition team to create a thoughtful display honoring Eleanor's story, while exploring wider themes of disability, social pressure, and women's lives in early 20th century America. The exhibition showed the original photograph beside the enhanced version, allowing visitors to see both the public image and the concealed reality. Eleanor's diary pages and letters were displayed with permission from her estate, offering rare personal insight. One section focused on the history of prosthetics and the stigma surrounding disability at the time. Dr. Martinez loaned period prosthetic devices, and the display explained how attitudes toward disability have changed over the past century. The exhibition also shared stories of other Newport families who faced similar struggles, showing that the Peton experience was not unique. Catherine arranged for Eleanor's prosthetic finger, found among her belongings, to be displayed. The delicate ivory piece, carefully crafted to match her natural fingers, showed both the skill of early prosthetic makers and the lengths Eleanor went to hide her injury. Most importantly, Catherine worked with disability rights advocates to create educational programs around the exhibit. Visitors learned how society's understanding of disability has evolved and how Eleanor's story still connects to modern challenges. On opening night, Catherine stood before the Peton family portrait, now fully aware of the meaning behind Eleanor's carefully placed left hand. The white glove that once hid pain now stood as a symbol of strength, resilience, and the difficult choices faced by women of Eleanor's time. After more than a century, the photograph had finally revealed its secret. More than that, it sparked important conversations about dignity, acceptance, and the quiet courage it takes to live under society's expectations while carrying personal hardship. Eleanor Piton's hidden truth was finally told, and her story would inspire future generations to understand that real strength is often found in what we choose not to show.